How you doing?
Good. Gareth. Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Welcome.
A little bit jet lag, not so much.
No, I'm good now. I'm alright now, yeah.
My understanding is you've been practicing CLAB for a couple of years.
Okay, I did it for about 10 months for the first movie. So like in terms of me as a practitioner, I've not kind of done it for quite a while now. But yeah, the guys in the film, they're the ones that do it more often.
Which naturally leads to the question: how many press-ups can you do?
Right now, not many. Right now, not many. Actually, if we talk about like Yayan, who plays Mad Dog,
yeah,
like that guy is a maniac. He can do like 500 press-ups and 500 sit-ups and stuff like that. So then, and there's no surprise there because when you see him, he's carved out of wood. It's ridiculous. Yeah, he's a strong chap.
Sure. I mean, pretty much everyone in the film is like some sort of an action star, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we did a big casting process. We saw about 400 odd people, and we whittled it down to like 80 that could actually do the screen fighting that we needed other men.
Can you tell me a little bit about your relationship with EVANS?
Iko Weiss, yeah.
Iko Weiss. I mean, you guys, you met him previously.
I met him on a documentary. I was directing a documentary about Pencak Silat. He was a student of one of the masters that I was filming. And basically, yeah, we saw him during a practice session one day. He just immediately screamed out, like he had this screen presence about him. He had this sort of natural ability to deliver Silat in a way that looked super exciting and looked very visual and very cinematic as well. And so I immediately kind of was like, we got to work with this guy. We have to find a way that we could do something with him. And so yeah, we did Merantau and now The Raid. So.
Sure. So how do you go from Wales to directing a top action film in Indonesia?
All the documentary. It was all about that documentary basically. I was based in Wales up until I was like 27. I'd always wanted to be in the film industry, but never really did enough to kind of get noticed. I didn't push myself enough. So it's mainly my fault I didn't do films here. And then my wife, then she kind of saw that. She could realize that I wasn't really, fulfilling what I wanted to set out to fulfill. And so she put in a few phone calls because she was Indonesian Japanese, so she put out phone calls with some producers that she knew in Indonesia, and she got me a directing gig, and that directing gig was the documentary, and that what introduced me to not just Iko but also the martial art of Silat as well.
Oh, awesome. Something that I find with a lot of Eastern films, particularly martial films, is that there is a huge amount of ideology and philosophy and deeper meaning to and people in the East understand that when they're going to see a film in the cinema. A lot of that is lost in the West. I was wondering, was The Raid is all out action? Was that the focus from the beginning, or was there a bit of there was some philosophy at some point and then you just took that away?
I think it was one of those things where our first movie was so, first movie Merantau, was so much about the tradition and the culture that really for this one I just wanted to kind of go out and have fun with it. Like this was more a reaction to that idea of we'd struggled for a year and a half to try to get finance for a different film made first, and when that fell through and this became the backup, I was like, you know what, I'm going to do what I want on this one. I'm going to have so much fun on this one. I wanted it to be, initially I thought it was going to be a breezy 80-minute movie. It ended up being like 100, but still, it was that breakneck pace that I was going for. We put little cultural elements, little sort of touches, the sort of the spiritual, physical and mental preparation in the morning when he's praying and exercising, saying goodbye to his wife. And that was something we kind of put in very subtly to kind of just give this idea of, hey, here you go, here's a Muslim hero. But here's someone who's a Muslim hero, but without it being preachy. And it was just to kind of put little touches rather than to go overboard, rather than to be too heavy-handed with it. Yes. And I think if we try to kind of force too much culture or tradition or something in this movie, then it would have been imbalanced then, and it wouldn't have had that same kind of freneticism as we were going for.
A large part of The Raid for me was, it's not only the physical aspects and the action of it, which is full on horror, but it's the atmosphere you create. Now, can you tell me a little bit about your cinematic influences as well as your narrative influences?
Well, when it came to designing The Raid, I knew I had to bring it in on a decent budget. I couldn't go too far with it. So it was one of those ideas that we were like, okay, well, let's make it all in one location. As soon as that was decided, as soon as I figured out that, I started looking back on all the films that I loved that kind of have that similar setup. So I'd watch Die Hard, Assault on Precinct 13, Escape from New York, Rec 1 and 2, all of these movies. And what I realized was that none of them were martial arts movies, none of them were action films. They were more survival horror. And so I realized that if I stripped away all of the action and took away the martial arts, I was left with a survival horror concept. And so then that kind of lent itself to this idea of, alright, well, once we go inside that building, the audience, I'm not going to let go of you. I'm going to keep holding on to your collar, I'm going to drag you from every location to the next. And, you know, once that set piece is finished, you can't quite breathe yet. I'm going to give you something else. I'm going to give you a horror scene, a claustrophobia scene, like tension, suspense, thriller, that kind of thing. And I realized then early on that like I can do anything with this. I don't have to follow the tropes of a martial arts movie. I don't have to follow the sort of the genre conventions. I can bring in different genres and mix it all up and see if I can get it to work like organically and not feel like it was forced then. And that was exciting, and to kind of know that I could get away with that kind of opened it up for me then.
And that comes across on screen.
Oh,
it's like a bit of genre bending. And you mentioned Red, you mentioned Escape from New York, Assault on Precinct 18. Well, who are some of your favourite directors?
Carpenter, obviously. John Woo, Jackie Chan. I could roll off a list of names. You know, I could say like David Fincher, Scorsese, Kurosawa, everyone, Tarantino, and all these different filmmakers that I love and admire. Not in any way influenced The Raid, but like my favourite movie of all time is Magnolia, Paul Thomas Anderson, and like he's a phenomenal filmmaker. He's an incredible filmmaker. I consume a lot. I consume a lot of different films. Kitano, Miike. I keep wanting to say different names all the time, and I watch everything that I can possibly take in. And what I love the most is that when you watch these movies, it takes you to a different place, and you can get a full a full experience. And once you're in that cinema and you're watching that movie and it takes you into that different world and you're in the hands of a director that's so confident and so controlled in terms of what they're doing, those are the exciting times. That's the exciting thing about cinema, and that's why I love it.
You talk about sort of taking your audience and controlling them, which is, all the great directors have that mindset, and I think about it. I've actually had a conversation with Tarantino where he talks about that, and Alfred Hitchcock talks about that as well. I mean, how do you prepare for that? What feeds into that to get you into that mindset?
I don't know really. I don't know if there's like a formula for it. It was just, for me, it was always a case of how to write that storyline, how to write those scenes to make them feel like they organically flowed from one to the next. That's one of the things I've always kind of tried to do, is that like I build up these films so that like you build up to a point and you have like a rolling scenes where there's like it's one consequence that leads on to another, and so that it feels natural, that the audience are willing to go with it. There's nothing harder than when you try to introduce something that the audience isn't ready to go with you yet. And so it's like, I always try to kind of have it that it always reaches like a logical point of conclusion. So
I've heard rumours about a remake of The Raid, an English language remake of The Raid, a sequel called Burundal.
Yes.
As well as an action film based on actually events called Breaking the Bank. Can you sort of shed some light on your next steps?
Okay.
What's going to be?
Remake, I'm exec producing, meaning I have a certain amount of say in some decisions, but not all. I feel like the remake will work best if it has a fresh pair of eyes attached. So the director has to have creative freedom and control to be able to kind of bring their own thing to it. I feel like what we have in The Raid is a pretty good shell of an idea, and there's a lot that they can do inside that. They can take it in different directions and see where they're going to go with it, and I think that's kind of exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing it. One of the things that's really cool about the remake is that they're actually going to use Iko and Yayan as the choreography team. So in terms of that, we get to bring Silat to the screen in Hollywood, which is great for us because that's part of our remit. Beyond making commercial films, we also want to promote Silat, so that's great. Sequel, I'm going to shoot that in January next year, and for the sequel it's going to be different from the first one. We're not copying the same formula as the first, so it's no longer inside a building, it's no longer about that one sort of location. It's expanding the universe, so it's a continuation of the story that kind of takes it out onto the streets instead. And now we meet the people that let the boss have that building. So these are his bosses. So it's a much bigger world now and a much more sort of complex storyline. And then for Breaking the Bank, that's something that's very, very early in development right now, but it's a fascinating story, and it's something that I was really excited by when the guys pitched it to me. And I think, that's got potential to be very big as well. But right now, that's kind of too early to kind of say too much about. Sure. I'm just looking forward to, like, once I finish with the sequel, to kind of stuck in on that one and see how it goes for that as well.
Last question.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself, the action genre itself it does reach a saturation point somewhere along the line. Do you see yourself breaking out of that genre and exploring something?
For sure. Breaking the Bank is going to be one of those types of films. Like, I don't see Breaking the Bank as being an all-out action film. It's more interesting to me as a character piece, as a character study, and that's something that I want to do. Like, I mean, the stuff I do in Indonesia, it's most likely going to be martial arts action films, most likely going to be eco-wise vehicles. But the stuff I do outside of Indonesia will be me sort of like spread my wings a little bit and trying to kind of do like different films, different genres. So fingers crossed I can achieve some success in other movies as well. If I get to do it, my dream thing would be to do a Western at some point. Something along the lines of The Wild Bunch, because that's the film that I watch with my dad all the time. So if I can do that, enter that genre, it would be a great thing as well.
Awesome. Gareth, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Cheers. Thank you, man. Thanks.